I'm going to find Minsk and make him pay.
On le sait depuis des lustres, la prochaine secousse sismique dans l'univers déjà bien énervé de Starcraft sera Heart of the Swarm, la première extension du RTS sortie en 2010. C'est à l'occasion de la MLG Spring Championship de Anaheim, une grande compétition sur Starcraft 2 notamment, qu'une version jouable a été proposée. Les pro-gamers, les casters, les spectateurs et quelques journalistes ont ainsi eu le privilège de goûter au nouvel équilibrage et surtout aux nouvelles unités. Dustin Broder, game designer sur Heart of the Swarm, nous décrit les rouages de cette extension.
So we're really trying, with Heart of the Swarm, we're trying to add a bunch of new units to add a lot more strategy to the game. We want to give players more choices and more options that hopefully shake up the game a little bit and keep it interesting and fresh, but also make the experience deeper and richer. The two types of things we're really sort of focusing on, and each unit has sort of different roles in these ways. We're trying to either solve core problems in the game, stuff that's just a little bit broken that could do a little bit better. Battle Hellion would be a unit that's an example of this, where Terrans really struggle in some late game scenarios against Zealot, Archon mixes from the Protoss. So trying to give them something they can just really use more easily to deal with that. We're also trying to make sure that some of the metagame gets sort of more open for players. I love that Terran versus Terran matchups are so diverse. There's so many different units used, and there's so many different strategies. And at the highest level of play, there's a legitimate choice between factory-based play and infantry-based play, which is absolutely a joy to watch. It feels like one of our best matchups in that sense. In a lot of cases, though, TVT does devolve into just Viking siege tank duels, right? Who's got the most Vikings? They can crack the siege tank line, and that's the end of the story. And it can become, I think, very monotonous in that respect. And so when it falls into that space, I think it gets to a very unhappy space. With very great players, they won't let it get to that point. But I think for those of people who are in bronze to maybe even master or grandmaster in many cases, the pros, obviously, where a whole other realm can break out of that. But I think a lot of people struggle in that case. And so we would like to see us a little bit more diverse. We'd like to see a legitimate ground option to fight off the siege tank, which is why we're experimenting with the Warhound. And then there's some races that are missing some abilities we think would make the race more fun to play. So, for example, the Protoss don't really have an efficient or effective way to raid. They can kind of do it with Phoenix and with Anti-Grav, but not very effectively. And so we're creating units like the Oracle to try to give them options that they just don't have right now. Tempest with 22 range is definitely an example of us pushing it. And we do this all the time. Like, units are no fun if they're not powerful. Every unit in the game has got to be really strong and have a really great reason to build it. And every unit should feel like, well, I could win the game with that unit alone. Like, that unit, if there's enough of them, or if I use them in the right place, would just ruin the enemy. Look at things like Medivacs and Banshees and, Marine Marauder. I mean, these are roaches. I mean, there's every one of these units, if used correctly, could win you the game. And every unit should hopefully feel insanely overpowered. But the 22 range is totally pushing it. Like, that might be way too much. And that, I feel like that's an easy fix, though. That's one number. I can change that at my desk today in 5 minutes. Like, that could become a range 12 in no time. But we need to see. Like, we need to make this different. Like, I don't want the Tempest just to be a Colossus built from the Stargate, right? And the extreme range is one of the things that's really making it stand out right now as a unit that is fundamentally different from every other unit in the game. It's what makes it not a Colossus. It's what makes it not a Broodlord. It makes it a very different unit because of that extreme range. And so we're going to test it, and we're going to see if we can get away with it. But yeah, I think it's a legitimate concern, and it's something that we're very ready to nerf if it doesn't work out. At BlizzCon, we showed a Protoss unit called the Replicant, which was a lot of fun. It was a unit that could turn into any unit it could see. So I could make a Protoss siege tank if I saw an enemy siege tank, or I could make a Protoss Broodlord if I saw a Broodlord. It could copy any unit. We had a lot of trouble with it at the end of the day. It was difficult to find a balance point for it. We ended up pricing it so that it costs similar to the most expensive units in the game, and then you would never use it except on anything but those very expensive units, which was not such a great unit for the game at that point. And sometimes it actually caused players not to build units at all. So I didn't want you to have a Protoss Ghost, so I'd never build a Ghost. It's like, oh my God, we're taking units out of the game. Like, this unit's actually driving away diversity, which is exactly the opposite of what we try to do. We try to make sure that all the units have roles so that every player has choices all the time. So there's lots of diversity in the game. So it was a cool unit. It seemed really powerful, and it seemed like it'd be really fun. We could never find the right balance point for it, and it was actually destroying game diversity. And so that's an example of why a unit wouldn't make it into the game. It's either too powerful or too weak, and there's no middle ground. Or sometimes it just damages the game for other players so much. It's like more fun for the player who gets it, and it makes less fun for everybody else. Not in the sense it's too powerful, but it literally causes them to make more boring choices. And that's what we're really trying to avoid.
What is best? To crush the Zerg See it and driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the Protoss.
Well, we were playing the game quite a bit. We get a lot of feedback from the fans that they were going to miss the idea of the Thor, that it was something they did enjoy playing with, and we started looking for other ways we could solve the problems besides cutting the unit. This was sort of part of the whole discussion that's gone over the last year and a half. I had this crazy idea that we could actually cut units and replace them, and over time, it felt bad at every time we made that decision. We're like, but I missed the Thor. Couldn't we solve that some other way? And so we're trying with the Widowmine right now to solve some of the problems we were trying to solve to replace the Thor. And so we never at one point decided we weren't going to pursue this strategy. We just looked around one day and realized almost every decision had gone the other way. And we're like, we're not doing this anymore. Like we said we were going to do it, and we didn't like any of those decisions. So we just eroded them all away. And so now where we're at right now, for the most part, is there's some units that are tweaked, but there's not a lot that's really removed. Doing. And the original goal was to keep the unit mix small, to keep it clean, to keep it clear, to make it easy for you to scout enemies. And that's still, I think, a legitimate concern is, are there enough things in play right now that it's too difficult to know what the enemy's going to do next? And that's what we're going to have to play a lot more to find that out. And that's partly why we're here at MLG today, to get some feedback from regular players who are going to play down on the show floor, but also pro players who get a chance to play. But it's also, when we go to beta, we'll learn a whole lot more about where these weaknesses are in the game and what, if anything, we need to do to shore up those weaknesses. So we have a number of things we use to monitor, feedback from our players. We obviously can meet and greet with many of these players personally. So we have people here from the team now, I'm sure, who will talk to fans while they're here. We've also got, obviously, our forums and the forums of other websites all over the world. We have a legion of community guys who go out there and gather this information for us and bring it back to us and tell us what people are saying about the game. We also have personal contact with a lot of the pro gamers who can give us feedback directly. And of course, we've got stats from Battle.net that tell us empirically who's winning, who's losing, at what point in the game they're winning and losing. Are they winning and losing in North America, in Europe, in Korea, in China? What matchups, all of that. And so we can see very clearly when we've got a ladder problem. And then we've got tournament results as well. So, we are very, very blessed at this point to have streaming video and internet video that we can watch. I can go watch every match that was played in the GSL ever tonight if I want to. I don't have that much time, but I could, in theory, watch it all. And so I can really get a look at these games, and they're archived for me, and I can go and look at them and see, okay, what was happening then with this balance? What's happening now with this balance? And so it's a very, very powerful tool to let us see what's happening. And then, of course, so we get the community guys also gather for us all the results of all the tournaments. And of course, we watch a lot of them personally ourselves to see, what is going on, what's happening, and see what the results are.
There's too many Zerg! We're not gonna make it!
This is a legitimate concern we've heard before is, will we split the community by having a Wings of Liberty community and a Heart of the Swarm community? Maybe. It didn't happen in Brood War. It didn't happen in Warcraft 3 and Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne. We have to hope that we do a good job, that we make the best possible product, and have confidence that we won't release it until we think it hits that standard. Certainly, we're being given the time by Blizzard to get it as right as we know how. It's a risk. I don't think it's going to happen just because we've seen this happen twice before in our games, and the community has always come with us, and we've always managed to make something that's compelling enough that everybody wants to come over. But yeah, it's definitely a risk. If we mess up with Heart of the Swarm and do a bad job with it, or just do an okay job, then we could definitely get into a position we have a split community, which would be a bit of a bummer.
I am the swarm.